Okay, welcome back YouTubers. I know you're gonna like this video. I get a lot of response asking me to do lots of videos, and I will. But this is a video you're gonna like. It's the top 10 worst things about being a professional programmer. Now, I have to say a few things before I get started. First of all, I'm talking about professional IT programmer. I've been doing this since 1998. I've got over 20 years. I'm talking about a corporate, real, mainstream, business problem solving type job. I'm not talking about some guy who did a website for his church, okay? Now, disclaimer, you are watching a video called Top 10 Worst Things. That doesn't mean it's a terrible career. Don't write me and say, oh, I'm going to rethink doing this career. It sounds terrible. It sounds awful. No, you're watching a Top 10 Worst Things video, okay? So, we're talking about the worst things. We're not talking about the best things. I also can make a top 10 best things video. So don't take this video too seriously, okay? Don't do that. Don't get all mad and say, oh, he hates his job, he hates his job. No, this is a top 10 worst thing. All right. The number 10. Now, it is really hard to rank some of these things. And when I was thinking about them, I actually had trouble because there's probably more like about 20. So some of these are going to be grouped together because I'm trying to jam it into 10. But I'm going to pick number 10 as being the drive and the commute to work. Now, I admit, I know this is widely variable depending on where you live. But the commute to work in a major city where these programming jobs are can be a complete nightmare. The commute can be sometimes as much as an hour and a half or 2 hours. Ever seen that movie Office Space? Yeah, it can be just like that. Let me tell you a story. I was a consultant in Chicago. Couple stories. I was a consultant in Chicago. That means you work for one company and they send you out to another company somewhere else. It could be anywhere in the city. I thought I was going to go downtown Chicago. I thought I was going to live in the big buildings, you know, and see all the big buildings and taxi. Didn't do that. Happened to move to the suburbs, okay? My consulting contracting company was also in the suburbs. And guess how much I worked downtown in my 7 years in Chicago? 2 weeks. 2 weeks out of 7 years did I work downtown because all the major companies were in the suburbs. So I ended up living in the suburbs and working in the suburbs and hardly ever going downtown. So the whole excitement of living in a big city wasn't really there. Here's what happened. The worst commute I ever had was 52 miles. I lived in Plainfield, Illinois, which is far southwest Chicago. And they sent me to Northbrook, Illinois, way up 52 miles through the city of Chicago. 52 miles isn't very bad on a highway, but try going through the city. So I had this meeting. It was a daily stand-up meeting at 9 o'clock. I was late for it every single day. It took me an hour and a half to get there, minimum hour and a half. It took me hour and a half minimum to get home. Some days it would take me 2 hours to get home. If it rained on a Friday, forget about it. 2.5 hours to get home. Complete nightmare. But at the time I was kind of stuck. Like I had the house, I had the job, and you might think, well, why'd you move so far out of the city? Why'd you do that? Well, guess what? The housing bubble caused all the housing prices to be 300, 350, 400,000. You couldn't get a house under 300,000 unless you moved way far out. So that's what everyone did. So if you don't know, Chicago is on the lake. And you can't go into the lake, so everyone goes out to the west and the east. But there is no east from the city because you'll be in the water. So here's what happened. I was commuting, and I timed it. It was about 15 hours per week. I was commuting in my car. Guess what? The very next job, it was in Atlanta. They were sending me every week flying to Atlanta and back. I would leave on a Sunday night. It would take me about an hour in a cab to go to the airport, get on a plane, fly to Atlanta, get a taxi cab, a rental car, go to my hotel, which was right across the street from the work, and then I'd work all week. On Thursday night, I would fly back, and I'd be Friday, Saturday, Sunday at home. It's pretty exciting, actually. You know what's funny? Guess what? The total time per week commuting from Chicago to Atlanta was less than me commuting from Chicago to Chicago. It was 15 hours. It was more like 12 hours to commute to Atlanta. And the reason why is because once I got to my hotel, I was right across the street. Whereas when I was in Chicago, I had to drive 52 miles. So I actually have a commute that was shorter in time-wise from Chicago to Atlanta per week than it was from Plainfield, Illinois up to Northbrook, Illinois. All right, that was my first story. It can be a nightmare. I left Chicago for a good reason, and I've never looked back. So that top 10, and that actually might be worse than 10, but we're going to leave it at 10 right now. Number 9. Every single thing you do in IT is virtual. So what I'm telling you is everything is not real. Everything you do doesn't exist.
This is the construct. It's our loading program. We can load anything from clothing to equipment.
Right now, we're inside a computer program?
Is it really so hard to believe?
As far as you can tell. You can't touch it, you can't hold it, you can't push it around, you can't build it. Everything is virtual. And it can be kind of disappointing and strange to think, I worked all day, but what did I build? I don't know, it's somewhere on some hard drive somewhere, you gotta go look it up. Granted, what we do is hard, it's very valuable, I understand all that, but it's still very virtual. And this causes a problem. What happens when you walk right into a brand new company? How do you start working? Everything is hidden. Everything is hidden from you. Everything. Settings are hidden. Files are hidden. Access is not given to you. Everything is closed. Everything is dark. So everything we do, we're working in the dark. Now, granted, you can bring it up on the screen and do it, but everything we do is virtual. It can be a little disappointing, and it can be very difficult to debug, especially if you have a server. If you're working on something and you push it out to a server and it's not working and you don't know how to debug it out there. All right, so number 9 is everything is virtual. Not good. Number 8. Every single time you think you've got something learned, it changes. Everything you do changes constantly, changing. Every single time you think you're comfortable, especially if you go to a new job, everything you learn, throw it out the window. Now, I know everything does build on itself, but you're always learning something new. And as soon as you learn it, they throw it out and they build another tool. Your career is constant change, constant learning. And it can sort of feel a little like, man, I hope it doesn't keep speeding up. You think with all this technology, I was always afraid things would get so easy that anyone could do it. I thought, man, they're going to make things so good that any idiot can come in and just drag and drop and be done. No, it's gotten worse. Everything has gotten worse. Everything's gotten more complicated. More complicated. I think things are getting more complicated and going faster than ever. So I don't see things getting simpler. I see things getting harder. And what we do is changing so much. So number 8 comes in at constant change. No matter what you learn, it's not like being, I honestly don't think being a doctor is as hard as what we do.
I'm a doctor, not an engineer.
No, you're an engineer.
I'm not saying being a doctor is easy, but I'm saying the human body doesn't freaking change. The human body's got the same stuff in it it did yesterday, and 100 years ago, and 1,000 years ago. It doesn't change on you. If you look at a computer, everything changes on a computer. I swear, I think being a doctor is actually easier than being a programmer, because they don't change everything out on you. Yeah, they've got technology, they've got to stay up top, but they also specialize, don't they? Well, we specialize too. We have to specialize in databases or front end or back end or mid-tier, whatever it is. We have to specialize just like they do. They specialize. They've got only kids doctors, pediatricians. They've got ear, nose, and throat. They've got heart specialists, brain specialists, and we have to do the same thing, but their stuff doesn't change on them. I don't think so, at least. Number 7, meetings. You will never spend more of a waste of your life than you will in a meeting. You will be in a hell of a lot of meetings, and probably 90% of them won't have anything to do with you. You know what I mean. You'll sit in a meeting, and everyone will be talking about what they're doing and they're doing and what they're doing, and it'll have nothing to do with you. And I don't know about you, but when I have something to say, I get to the point. I'm not saying like right now. Right now I'm kind of rambling. But when I'm in a business and I have something to do, I say, here's what I need to do, here's what you need to do. And every discussion is very short. There's no long discussions, it's very short. But everyone else will apparently can ramble on and on. Get used to it. Meetings are part of IT. They're part of the corporate world. Number 6, company changes, restructuring, mass layoffs. Every now and then you'll be at a company that either merges, splits apart, or some hotshot thinks that he's fancy pantsy and he'll come in and think, oh, we're going to redo everything, and he won't know half of what you do. I'll tell you a story. I worked at a very big company, and they were a little behind. I won't lie. They were a little behind, okay? Well, this hotshot guy comes in from Silicon Valley, right? And you can kind of see through him. You can kind of see that he's not that great, but he is selling this company, man. He's selling it. We're going to do everything right. We're going to do this and that. And I don't want to name things too specifically because it would name the company and the person, and I don't want to get involved in that. It's a long time ago, okay? But this guy, I knew that he didn't know what he was doing when we were talking about versions of source control. Like, we need to use source control. Like, we need a good standard across the company. And he's like, well, I'm not very familiar with source control. And he was the chief technology officer. Chief technology officer. He didn't know what source control was. That's when I knew he didn't know what he was doing. And that's when I lost faith in the company. I'm like, this guy is just, all he's doing is talking a big show. So he broke the teams apart. He said, we're going to do agile this and agile that. And he didn't know, they didn't know how to implement it. They didn't do it right. They didn't train anyone. They just said, do it. We just want to see, put things on boards, and here you have a Kanban and you do agile. And they wanted the appearance of doing it. But my point is, that number is restructuring of your company. All of a sudden, your company that you're comfortable with and you're doing a great job with, you're having a great team, guess what? Blows up. Number 5. There's a new term, and it's called visibility. It's not new, but this is always going to be part of your career. Upper management always wants to know what everyone's doing. They want to make sure they're getting their money for what they're doing. They're paying you. What are you giving them back, okay? That's why they pay you. That's all good. I understand that. That's great. But what ends up happening is this game starts to play. They want visibility. They want to know what you're doing. They want to make sure you're working. All good. I understand that. But this weird game starts to happen where it might seem like you're not working hard. Or it might look like somebody that's not working hard is harder than he is, because they start playing these games with the visibility. So you might have to do status reports. You might have to do all kinds of things, like where you have to show the work you're doing. You might have to do demos. And certain people that have certain skills can show they do a lot more, but not necessarily true. So you can get caught up in the visibility, which this ties into politics, okay? This visibility and politics probably should be ranked higher than 5. I don't know. It's hard to rank these in order, but there's politics in there's politics in everything. You can't even be a firefighter. You can't work in the city council. You can't work in the church without politics. But corporations have tons of politics. So if you're friends with so-and-so, that person might get the raise or the promotion. And if you don't like to play that game, you just want to work, you just want to build, you're going to have problems because there's politics. Sometimes there's people that can put pressure. I'll give you another example. They were choosing, at that same company, they were choosing technology that we were going to use without consulting us, okay? They had a few people that were pretty high up in this company long ago. They were choosing certain technologies, and they were saying, oh, this is great. So the vendor would come, and they say, hey, here's what you can do with this. Here's what you could do. And they go, oh, I love it. And then they buy it and say, here, you use it. Make you do it. So we would get these tools, and we're like, these things, we don't know what they do. Like, we don't know if they work or not, but you couldn't say anything because some idiot up high got sold on a bill of goods that this thing did something wonderful. One of them was this thing that promised you could build websites by dragging and dropping, create a few fields, drag and drop. And they're like, this is great. We can get rid of the programmers. Anybody can do this. Guess what? They said, we have to do it. And it didn't work. That program didn't work. It wasn't detailed enough. You couldn't code in it. It just wasn't. And we had to go and tell them, I know you bought this and you didn't ask us anything. but the dang thing doesn't do what you want it to do. And they get mad at us like, well, yes, it does. They told us it did. The vendor told us it did that. Like, no, it doesn't. We tried, it doesn't. So, that's my point. Politics. I don't know where you'd rank that, because that's bad, because that can be worse, and better and worse in some places. Number 4. Your programming job is this. That's it. You never do anything else. It's either that or it's a meeting. If you think you're going to be saving lives, if you think you're going to be helping people, if you're not going to be, surgery and brain surgery, you're not going to be a policeman, you're not going to have any variety. It's going to be programming. You're going to be sitting in a chair all the time, and that's going to cause weight gain. It's not good for your health. You got to get up and walk around. There are things to combat. I'm going to make a better video than this. That's a top 10 good things that will combat all of these things. But sitting all the time is not good for your health. You got to get up once an hour at least and walk around. You got to eat better. It's real easy to start grabbing Cokes and do the thing of the kid in the basement, Coke after Coke, and all of a sudden you look down and you're like, my God, look at this. What happened? Number 3. Now this might be true in other industries, but there can be a lot of stress. Oftentimes you're put in a position to work on something that you don't really understand. And you are always asked, how long is it going to take? And if you tell them a number, it's never, oh no, that's too long. If you say, I think I can do this in a week. No. What's a real answer? So so they're always pressuring you to make that time shorter. So there's this stress, there's a constant battle of, can you do this faster? Can you do this faster? And then what ends up happening is, even if you get it done, there's no big celebration. What happens is, guess what? They just give you another thing, and another thing, and another. So I don't want to mean to sound bad, but it's kind of a thankless job. And I'm not saying other careers aren't like that. I'm sure being a police officer, everybody hates you. You're doing a hard job. You got to arrest people. Everyone hates you. The media hates you. Civil rights groups hate you. I get that. But there's still this feeling that, hooray, you did it. Yay. That's great. Here's another problem. Here's another problem. So you're constantly fixing problems. And there's never this hooray moment. It's not like in a movie or something where there's a hooray moment. It's just another problem. And it can be kind of stressful. It can kind of get you down. You cannot internalize the problems, okay? If you have troubles, you cannot internalize it. You can't blame yourself. You can't say, oh, it's my fault, I'm stupid. But those things can get to you after a while because people come to you, hey, this isn't working. Hey, this isn't working. Hey, this isn't working. This isn't working. I'm so sorry, this isn't working. Oh, thanks, that's great, yay. And then they leave and you're like, well, it's not like I got a bonus or something. It's not like I got a trip to Hawaii. Right? Not that I expect that. Number 2, arrogance. Arrogant people. So you will work with, and this will be even worse in your earlier years when you work, somebody that's a know-it-all, or it's arrogant, or it's hard to work with. There is nothing worse in this planet than working with someone that's arrogant. I worked with this guy once that was he would talk to me like I was a child, and he had this certain way of doing things, right? And I didn't really, and I knew how to do what he wanted. I knew how to get it done. But it didn't make sense to me the way he was doing it. So I was doing it my way, and he flipped out. He says, what did you do? Didn't I tell you you're supposed to... It was a long store procedure script that tore everything down and rebuilt it. Well, I didn't think it made sense to tear everything down and rebuild it. If I only worked on one little thing, all I wanted to do was tear down the little thing and build the little thing. I didn't want to build everything. So that's what I did. But he flipped out. No, I told you to rip everything down and build it. Do not. We got in this whole argument thing. But he was very arrogant. He wasn't nice. He wasn't, let's work through this. So arrogance can be a very big problem. In some cases, especially when you're new and you don't have confidence, when you really don't have that much confidence, people can come off as, man, you didn't know that? Man, how long have you been programming? How long have you been working? I worked with this one guy once that I'm pretty darn sure I worked 40 hours a week. And there were a few days I got there before him and after him, but one day he was a lot more experienced than me and he had a lot more say, a lot more clout. And one day, and we were working for the same company, he pulls me aside and goes, I don't think you got your 40 hours in this week. I'm like, well, I'm not keeping track, but he goes, I don't think you worked your full 40 hours. Did you work your full 40 hours? I'm like, oh my God. Actually, I think I did. But how do you argue with that? Because you're not keeping time. And he wasn't there when I got there. When I left, he wasn't there. So how did he know? That guy was really arrogant. Anyway, you're going to run across arrogant people. There's the worst people to work with. I always said I would rather work with a person that wasn't as smart and wasn't as experienced, that was nice, than someone that was really good but an ass. I would much rather work with a person inexperienced because I can work with that other person, but I can't work with arrogant because arrogance just pisses me off, okay? And now we've come to the number one worst thing about programming. This has caused me to actually leave more than one job. Jobs that I couldn't do because of number one, that I actually left. Bad code. Let me repeat that. Bad code. So oftentimes you're going to come into a position that somebody else has vacated, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 people have vacated. People come and they work and they leave, and they work and they leave. They work on the systems and then they get quit and fired. Work on the system. Then what you end up with is a mess, a total disaster, especially a database disaster that was written by someone that doesn't know databases. So what you have is this terrible code, terrible, messy, destructive, awful code. And they say, here, fix it. Get it to work. And you're like, I can't figure it out. Like you try to figure it out, and it's like, man, this is such a mess. And like, let me clean it up. And they're like, what's wrong? Why aren't you done? Bad code. I've worked on some of the worst databases that I couldn't get them to work. I didn't understand them at all. And I've worked on really good code that was really easy to understand. Bad code, working on bad code, working on someone else's bad code. The worst function I ever saw in my life was 2,500 lines long in one function. I just kept scrolling and scrolling, and they told me, oh, that's normal. That's our entire business is in that function. We want you to change it somewhere in the middle. Good luck. And then I tried to change it. I started going through it, and I was inexperienced at the time, so I thought it was my fault. I started going through the code like, oh my God, what the hell is this? Line after just, that's bad code because it violates the single responsibility principle where you're supposed to have each function does one thing and one thing only. Each class does one thing and one thing only. It violated that thousands of times. And it ended up being a nightmare. I ended up leaving that company. And I'm going to add one more top one, actually. It's tied with number one, okay? I had a number one, but it's tied. And that is a bad manager. Not too long ago, I had a bad manager. I took a contract not knowing how bad it would be. Here's the story. So I took a contract, and they wanted me to build a website for them very, 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 very fast, okay? So I started working on it and doing great, like normal work, and the manager comes over to me, and he's like, hey, how's it going? Okay, I want to see this, and like, okay, that's fine, all right. And I start working. An hour later, he comes, hey, how's it going? Have you made any progress? Hour later, over and over, 5 times that day. 5 times he visited me. Every day, 5 to 6 times. He was asking me, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? He was getting pressured from his manager above him. As a contractor, I was being like, whip code. It was like, code, right? And so I was doing great work, though. I was building this system. And they said, we don't want you to use SQL Server because it's too expensive. We want you to use Postgres SQL because it's free. And I said, I don't know Postgres SQL, but I'll do it for you anyway. I learned it, and I used it, and I built it in Postgres SQL. And then I built the whole thing in every day. One day, I was going to the bathroom in the urinal, and the manager walks in, and he starts talking to me while I'm going to the bathroom. Hey, how's it going? Did you get that thing done? Did you get that site done? I'd really like to see that today. while I'm going to the bathroom. And then again, it happened again, like 2 weeks later. I'm going to the bathroom. He walks in, hey, how's it going? I'm going to the bathroom, and he's asking me questions about my work. And I was like this close to saying, is this really the place to talk about work? Maybe we could wait a minute or two and go outside. Maybe we shouldn't talk to work while we're peeing. He even did it once while he was peeing. Like I was leaving, and he started saying, hey, he was peeing. He was like, hey, I want to talk to you about, he was like talking about work. I'm like, I can't believe this. I do not want to talk to someone about work that's peeing. This is ridiculous. So that's tied with number one, bad managers. I've had good managers too. I've had great managers. I've had terrible managers. The worst ones though, when I was contracting. Anyway, I hope you like my top 10 worst things. Don't take this the wrong way. There are good things out there. All you need is just a good drink, and you'll get through the day.
We standing up for our own shit, and if you want this motherfucker to the test, you gotta realize something, nigga. You fucking with the very bitch. I got this killer up inside of me. I can't talk to my mother, so I talk to my diary.